A beautiful but dangerous prisoner was being escorted by prison guards to meet a lawyer. The lawyer asked her to sign some papers so she could be transferred to another prison. But the prisoner knew it was a trap to get her killed, so she refused to sign. The question was, how would she eventually get out of prison? Let's see. A few days earlier, some Chinese members were raping a girl. That girl's boyfriend worked for the same gang. He tried to stop them from hurting his girlfriend, but he was afraid that even the gang's boss might kill him. Feeling helpless, Kong thought about ending his own life. But just before doing it, he changed his mind. He went to his girlfriend and promised her that he would take revenge for what had happened to her. Cut to the present. Outside the courthouse, there was a huge crowd. Today, the trial of China's most powerful mafia boss was happening. He knew this time he couldn't escape judgment. This time, he was sure to be sentenced to death. Kong also showed up at the courthouse, along with his girlfriend Xena. But Xena wasn't the same as before. Ever since that day, she had turned into a psycho. Inside the courtroom, the trial began. The lawyer demanded the death penalty for the mafia boss. Just then, a massive explosion shook the court, and Kang's men stormed in, spraying bullets everywhere. They slaughtered the judge, the witnesses, and everyone else inside. Outside, a policeman named Officer Dong heard the noise. At first, it sounded faint, like a child popping a balloon nearby. But to be sure, he moved toward the courthouse with his small unit. Meanwhile, the mafia boss was locked in his cell, yelling to be freed. Kong, standing nearby with Xena, laughed at him. They had been waiting for this moment for so long. The boss was the same man who had once raped Xena, and neither of them had ever forgotten that night. Xena tossed a bomb into the mafia boss's cell. Her revenge was complete. Officer Dong arrived, but in the chaos, it was impossible to capture the criminals. While escaping, Kong accidentally dropped his gun, which landed near Dong. Before Dong could react, Kang's men gunned down all the policemen. When Dong regained consciousness, he found himself surrounded by the bodies of his fellow officers. Xena tried to kill him too, but somehow he managed to escape. By now, the building where Kong and Xena were hiding was completely surrounded by police. But the mafia boss's son, Kun, sent his men to wipe out the cops so they could break free. At the same time, one of Dong's colleagues was being held at gunpoint. Dong warned the criminals to let his teammate go or face the consequences. Holding a bomb, Dong stepped closer. Kong hesitated, unsure what to do. But before anything could happen, Xena fired a shot. By mistake, it hit Kong instead. Kong died on the spot. The bomb exploded too, badly injuring Dong. Outside, Kun learned that Xena had betrayed him by killing his father. Furious, he ordered his men to retreat, leaving Xena behind for the police to handle. Soon, police stormed the building and found Xena sitting in front of Kang's dead body, crying. She placed a gun to her head, but the police got there just in time and arrested her. Dong lay nearby, badly wounded. When the police were taking Xena away, she looked at Dong and told him that one day she would return to see him again, for this very moment. After that, Xena was imprisoned. Meanwhile, Dong was taken to the hospital for treatment. The doctors informed him that his eyes could never be repaired with any surgery. He would never see again for the rest of his life. Another officer, Lin, had also lost a leg in the attack. Soon after, both of them were interrogated. Their superior officer tried to blame Dong and Lin for the entire incident. Lin stood up for Dong, telling their senior, every decision Dong made was to save people in that courtroom. He lost his sight fighting, and now you want to put the blame on him? Lin was ordered to sign some papers, but he refused. The next day, a funeral was held for the fallen policemen. Their families were furious. They had been told that Dong's poor judgment caused the massacre. They surrounded Dong, called him a coward, and even beat him. That night, when Dong tried to sleep, he was haunted by nightmares, dreams of his lost comrades dying over and over again. His blindness made daily life difficult, and his mind was constantly burdened with stress. One day, while walking down the street lost in thought, Dong accidentally smashed the window of a man's car. The police immediately arrested him, but Lin showed up in time to bail him out. Lin tried to calm him down, telling him, shouting in the streets won't help. The department already considers us guilty. Dong had a daughter named Jean, and she began taking care of him. Slowly, Dong started changing, trying to adapt to his new life. One evening at home, Dong heard strange noises inside his house. Alarmed, he rushed to Lin and discovered that Lin had planted surveillance devices inside. Dong destroyed them in anger, but Lin explained, your family is in danger. I placed those devices to protect you. Understanding his intention, Dong allowed Lin to stay in his house. Determined to become stronger, Dong began training himself. Though blind, he sharpened his other senses, learning to feel and detect everything happening around him. Meanwhile, in prison, Xena was repeatedly pressured to sign documents. Officer after officer came 31 times in total, but every time time, Xena refused. She knew it was a trap to get her killed. She told the police, "If you really want to kill me, then just do it. Stop playing these games." She also knew that Kuin wanted revenge for his father's death and was trying to have her transferred to another prison to eliminate her. Back at home, Dong was preparing his daughter Jean for her orchestra performance. Later, he sat in the audience, waiting proudly for her to appear on stage. Just before the performance, Jean realized she had left her things at home. Her teacher, angry at her carelessness, scolded her and told her, "I'll replace you with another girl." All the other children walked onto the stage to perform, while Jean stood behind the curtain, crying quietly. As Dong sat watching the children perform on stage, he noticed something strange. He realized that Jean wasn't there among them. Worried, he tried calling his daughter, but she didn't answer. Jean was too upset and refused to pick up. Dong left in the middle of the performance to search for her, but she was nowhere to be found. While questioning some of the children, his phone suddenly rang. It was Jean. She was screaming for help. Panicked, Dong rushed forward, but Kuin's men were already dragging Jean away. When Dong tried to stop them, they brutally beat him down. Barely conscious, Dong managed to call the police for help. A search operation began. Hours later, the police reported finding a girl's body on the seashore. She was wearing a school uniform. Dong hurried to the site, believing it to be his daughter. Seeing the body, he broke down in tears. But when he touched the girl's hand, he realized it wasn't Jean. He knew his daughter's hands too well. Someone had staged it to make him think Jean was dead. Meanwhile, in prison, Xena was being isolated. Other inmates refused to talk to her, and when she went for meals, some attacked her. Xena fought them off, but then she saw Dong on a TV screen. Recognizing him and remembering her promise for revenge, she finally agreed to sign the transfer papers. That very night, while Xena was being moved to another prison, Kuin's men ambushed the transport. The police van overturned, killing all the guards. As Kuin's men moved in to capture her, Xena grabbed a gun, opened fire, and wiped them out. She stole a police badge and a weapon before escaping. Elsewhere, the police forced Dong to sign documents declaring that the body found by the sea was his daughter. Once he signed, Jin's case was officially closed. As the police tried to escort him away, Dong suddenly fought back and escaped. During his escape, he grabbed a girl at gunpoint. Using her as cover, it turned out to be Xena. She had come to kill him, but upon seeing his broken state, she changed her mind. From that moment, she began following his lead. Xena revealed to Dong that his daughter had been kidnapped. She wanted to help him, telling him the police themselves were involved. That's why they had closed the case so quickly. If we go to them for help, she warned, they'll throw us in prison too. Meanwhile, Kuin was shown, frustrated by Xena's survival. He attended a secret auction where young girls were being sold, and among them was Jean. When Kuin tried to touch her, Jean bit his hand. Back with Dong and Xena, the two infiltrated the criminal's hideout. Dong pretended he was there to sell Xena in exchange for his daughter. They were brought before an old woman. Dong told her, "I'm here to trade this girl for my daughter." But the old woman claimed she didn't know where Jean was. Instead, she offered him money and ordered him to leave. Xena was being led through a hidden passage when the old woman aimed a gun at Dong. Though blind, Dong sensed it and killed her first. He then followed through the secret door, only to be captured. The thugs chained him up and Xena was tied underwater. Dong was completely helpless. Meanwhile, Kuin was auctioning off the kidnapped girls. During the auction, each girl had to perform something to raise her value. On Kuin's command, Jean began playing the violin. Kuin was impressed by her and walked up to tell her that she should stay with him. But seizing the chance, Jean struck him on the head with the violin. His men quickly grabbed her before she could escape. Just then, Kuin received a phone call from Red Dragon. Elsewhere, Dong was being beaten by Red Dragon's men. Seizing the right moment, he managed to free Xena and started fighting the gang members. He overpowered one of them, snatched his gun, and shot down the others. When Red Dragon returned, Xena captured her and handed her over to Dong so he could find out where his daughter was. Under questioning, Red Dragon claimed she didn't know who Jean was, only that the girl was still somewhere in the city. Before she could say more, Xena killed her from behind. In the struggle, shards of glass pierced Dong's hands, but Red Dragon ended up dead. Outside, a police officer learned that a blind man had killed several gangsters. He immediately guessed it was Dong and set out to capture him. But by the time he arrived, Dong and Xena had already fled. The officer then told the media that Dong was behind the illegal killings, declaring him a wanted criminal. Watching the news, Dong realized the entire department had turned against him. Xena was still with him. She often thought about killing him, but each time she hesitated. Meanwhile, Kuin learned that Dong and Xena had killed Red Dragon. Terrified, he feared he was next, but his uncle assured him there was nothing to worry about. At the same time, Xena was staying in the apartment of that same police officer's girlfriend. When the officer came to visit, he opened the door and found Xena inside. At that very moment, Kuin's men arrived, searching for Dong and Xena. But as they stormed in, Xena set off a gas cylinder explosion, but not before he and Dong fought fiercely. fiercely. During the fight, Dong fell from the building, and Kuen's uncle assumed he was dead. But suddenly, an elevator door opened, and Dong emerged alive. A second brutal fight broke out. This time, Dong wrapped a wire around the uncle's neck and subdued him. Dong dragged him to one of Kuen's secret hideouts and beat him mercilessly, but the man refused to talk. Xena told Dong, "He'll never tell you anything. It's better if we just kill him." As she moved in to finish him, Dong stopped her and demanded, "Who are you really?" Xena repeated the same words she had once told Dong after escaping the police. Hearing this, Dong finally understood. She was Kang's girlfriend. At that moment, Lin appeared, but before anyone could stop her, Xena killed Kuen's uncle. Xena already knew where Kuen was hiding. Lin aimed his gun at her, but Dong begged him to stop. Lin ignored him and fired. To protect Xena, Dong attacked Lin. Meanwhile, the officer whose girlfriend had been killed by Dong arrived at the scene. He found Kuen's uncle dead, Lin injured, and realized Dong and Xena had once again escaped. Dong and Xena were in the car when Xena suddenly pointed a gun at him, intending to kill him. Dong calmly told her that if killing him would complete her revenge, then she should go ahead. But Xena replied that what surprised her the most was that even after knowing everything about her, he still let her live. Meanwhile, Kuen was auctioning off Jean. He wanted to give Jean one last chance to choose to stay with him, but Jean still believed that one day her father would come to save her. On the other side, Xena ordered one of her men to bring a truckload of weapons. When her ally arrived with the truck, he reminded her that the weapons would cost money. Xena needed the weapons badly, but she had no money. When the dealer pressed her about payment, she simply shot him and took the weapons, then headed straight for Kuen. At Kuen's auction house, he was busy running the bidding when suddenly he heard the sound of the front gate being smashed open. Dong had broken in. As Kuen's men rushed to stop him, Xena opened fire with a machine gun, mowing them down. They also cut the power, throwing the whole place into darkness. In the middle of the chaos, Dong heard his daughter's voice. He tossed a ball toward her, and when she caught it, he knew exactly where she was being held. Seeing his men being slaughtered, Kuen panicked and told his lawyer to have Dong killed. But the lawyer refused, saying he didn't want to make enemies. Dong kept fighting, killing his enemies one by one. Kuen had a bomb that he tried to strap onto Jean, but before he could succeed, Xena shot him. She then went on a rampage, killing every man who had once assaulted her. Still, her thirst for revenge wasn't satisfied. Xena strung Jean up inside a hangar and prepared to kill Dong's daughter as well. Dong begged her, pleading for his daughter's life, even offering his own in exchange. But Xena cruelly told him that if he killed her, his daughter would fall and die anyway. Dong was desperate, unable to see any way out. Then Jean managed to toss a ball down toward Dong. From the sound of it falling, Dong realized how high up she was. In that moment, he triggered an explosion near Xena, forcing her to release the rope. Dong leapt forward and caught his daughter just in time, saving her life. But Xena only laughed. She revealed that she had strapped another bomb to Dong's daughter, a bomb that used her own heartbeat as the timer. If Xena died, the bomb would go off and kill the girl too. Dong was furious, but he had no choice. To save his daughter, he started trying to defuse the bomb, despite being blind. His daughter guided him by telling him which wires to cut. Summoning all his courage, Dong finally cut one of the wires, and the bomb deactivated. Just then, an officer arrived and arrested Dong. The officer picked up the bomb, but when it began to make a strange noise, he panicked and threw it into the water. It exploded violently, leaving the officer badly injured. Because Dong was blind, the court did not give him a heavy sentence for his crimes. In the end, Lin also joined him, and with that, the story came to a close.